Hi, folks. Welcome to Cake. My name is Max Morris. I'm one of the organizers at this great event. One of our amazing pieces of programming is Free Smells, which is a comic mixtape by Ryan Sands. Ryan is a great editor, translator, and promoter of amazing art from around the world, and we figured that we'd give him an opportunity to talk about some of his favorite stuff. So here's Ryan, ready to blow your mind.
Yeah, that was good. Okay, cool. Thank you, Max. Thanks for stopping by. So Edie emailed me and said, just show us a bunch of weird stuff. I mean, said more than that, but that was the main premise. So I spent some time this week pulling together artists that you may know, some of their work that you haven't seen before, and hopefully just people that I think are cool that not enough people are talking about on Tumblr or on Twitter. So it's literally like a slideshow of tons of images of people that I think are cool. So someone said something about time for questions, or I don't know how that would work, so just put your hand up and yell stuff out, or I will say stuff that is probably incorrect, like, oh, this guy's from Finland. You're like, no, he's not. He's from Sweden. I'm like, oh, I don't know. But so feel free to interject. What I'll try to do is talk about where I encountered the artist, the things I dig about them, and then when I know it, some places to follow up, like Flickr or where to buy their stuff, just to get a feel for who these artists are and what they're all about. So I will start now. So I made a slide too. So I separated into 4 major sections. The first section is weirdo manga. And this is the stuff that's closest to my heart. I run a site called Same Hat that I haven't been updating lately, but been running for about 7 years. And that site is basically a collection of underground indie manga. I lived in Japan in high school and then in college and started just finding weird stuff. There's a few shops that specialize in, it's kind of like Fantagraphics and Picture Box mixed with Zap comics. So I just grabbed a bunch of stuff when I was there, and I've been digging through it, and I want to share some of it with you now. So the first person is Toru Yamazaki. He's actually been published in America by Dark Horse, but halfway through the publication of his work, they pulled the plug. But the comic that you should read is called Octopus Girl. It's a horror manga. Toru Yamazaki is I hope I'm not outing people. He's an gay manga artist who was inspired by Kazuo Umezu, who's the godfather of horror comics. So he has this comic called Octopus Girl, which is basically about a girl who turns into an octopus and starts terrorizing all the girls who bullied her in high school. I should have mentioned that there's going to be some things that are very violent and also nudity. So if you're not 18 or upset, sorry, Mason. He's shrugging. That's okay. There is some nudity and swearing and violence, so I hope you're okay with that. And if not, you can leave now. So yeah, this one plays a lot with some of the 70s and 60s horror and romance comic tropes. This is one of my favorites. I Can't Die for Love. She has a Little Mermaid moment where she's supposed to, I think, kill herself to gain the love of this prince, but instead she just stabs him in his bed. This is actually a hilarious comic, but I'm showing you terribly violent things. It's a really good juxtaposition of like straight up 70s horror manga with like kind of queenie tongue-in-cheek jokes. You can get a feel for some of the vibe here. So Dark Horse has put out the first 3 volumes of this. It's exceptionally one of my favorite comics of all time. Next up, Jiro Ishikawa. This is a person, he's actually someone close to all of our hearts. It's someone who actually does zines. So he's a manga creator who makes his own comics and binds them, staples them himself. I don't know too much about him, but his style is really graphical. He has a comic called Chimpoman, which is basically Dick Man. His style is really psychedelic. He has this a lot of halftones, interesting patterns, and really kind of intense layouts. It reminds me a lot of Yuichi Yokoyama, who Picture Box has published. And this is a book that's available on the internet. It's a little zine monograph, and it's I think after this I'll put a post up with links to everything I've talked about, but it's available at an online store called Tacoche, which is Tacoche. But you can get a vibe for some of this sort of intense psychedelic stuff. This is how the whole presentation is going to be. I hope that's okay. So if you have questions or you want to interrupt, just let me know. Yeah, so none of most of these creators have been none of the rest of the creators have been translated in English, but there's some have been scanned online, and there's a few other places you can find them. To date, his stuff has not been online, but it's so visual that I think it works even if you can't read Japanese. And as far as I know, he's our age. Like I think this is a dude who's in his late 20s, early 30s. I think, yeah. I really like that dog. Okay, the next person is Carol Shimoda. Carol Shimoda is a fine art painter from the 80s who moved from Japan to Brooklyn and started doing commercial work. But she is someone who is published in, there's two major anthologies that came out in the early 90s. One is called Comics Underground Japan, and the other one is called Secret Comics Japan. The first one was published by Blast in LA, and the other was published by Viz, and is a little more mainstream. But Carol is someone I encountered in high school, and I've tried to track down everything of hers I can find. Oh no. Oh no. These are transparent GIFs, so it looks terrible, so I'll go fast through this. I'll post some of this online. Sorry about that. This is a comic of hers that's in Comics Underground Japan called Selfish Carol Summer Vacation. It looks bad, so I'm going to go quickly. But basically, it's a story about romance that I really like, but I'll publish this one online afterwards. Okay. The next artist is Namio Harukawa. This is someone I really didn't know until I encountered a monograph of his work at that same store, Tacoche, which is in Nakano. It's a western suburb of Tokyo. They publish books like little minis, and they did a series, and he was one of the artists they featured. He likes big ladies. This is where it starts getting dirty, so I hope that's okay for everyone. He's a fine artist. He does a lot of work for kink and cult fetish magazines, and you can now tell what his proclivity is. I haven't talked to Johnny Negron, who some of you may know, but I feel like he is a fan of this artist as well. Namio Harukawa mostly doesn't do comics, but does illustrations for vintage. For fetish and kink sites. There is a site online called akotako.net, which specializes in Japanese art. They import a lot of kind of underground manga, and they just started selling original art by this creator. So they're graphite illustrations. They're a few $100s. They're quite expensive, but what a conversation piece. I always wonder which of the two characters in these works he's projecting himself onto. Well, I don't know. We'll see. Okay, flip side. This is Gekko Hayashi. He's published by the same. He is another illustrator by trade, not a cartoonist, who does work in Tokyo. Currently working. I think he's in his late 50s, early 60s, and he also has a monograph out from the same publisher, Tacoche, which you can find on that site, tacoche.com. This is the collection that I have. It's exceptional. It's just a lovely book full of these beautiful illustrations, and he is a gay pinup artist. He also has done a lot of historical illustrations for different period pieces and ghost stories. And this kind of book is pretty common in Japan, or at least it was in the 70s and the 80s, which is not a comic, not a novel, but sort of an illustrated picture book with really fantastical double spreads, full color with narration alongside. This is kind of his main jam. these lush, kind of delicate paintings. He also has done a lot of work for film posters. So yeah, this artist's name is Gekko Hayashi. This one doesn't have nudity officially. I don't think. Okay. Okay, so on the same vein, this is Gengaro Tagame. Tagame is a really interesting artist. He's one of the most popular gay manga artists in Japan. I didn't know much about his work until Chris Butcher, who runs the Beguiling and TCAF, the festival in Toronto, and he blogs at comics212.net, and he opened my eyes to this guy. He is so a lot of people know about yaoi, which is gay comics for women by women. It says beautiful boys. It's kind of like what you think of when you think of like some manga for girls. It's guys who look like girls, long, luscious, beautiful hair, and they're in fancy clothes, kissing on top of a limo and things like that. This is not that. This is gay manga for men by men, and specifically for bears by bears. This kind of jam. So he has a website and he blogs in English. This is he's one of many manga artists who like desperately want to be in English. Like he wants to be published in America, but he hasn't really found a publisher yet who is interested in this work. We doing a quick plug. The only plug I'll do for myself is we just put out the 3rd issue of our anthology called Thickness, and we were able to license a comic by Tagame in the back of the book. So it was his first official publication in English. He, without spilling any secrets because it's not announced yet, you will be seeing more of his stuff from a major publisher in the next year or two. This is another guy I just threw in just to show you a couple images because I love him so much. He worked on, his name is Takashi Kurihara. He's a video game designer who worked on, he was one of the 2 or 3 main designers who worked on Katamari Damacy. This is his stuff, and I just got a tattoo of one of his characters. And so I wanted to just show you some of this line work. He's been published by Seirin Kogeisha and Axe, which is a monthly anthology in Japan of indie comics. And it's a lot of this sort of adorable character work. Am I going too fast or too slow? Too slow? Oh, it's okay. Okay. So the next person I wanted to talk about in the manga section was George Akiyama. He's not super well known in America. In fact, I don't think he's been published yet in English, but I have a feeling that he will be soon. He's like Tatsumi and some of the artists that Drawn and Quarterly are publishing. He's someone who worked in the 70s and 80s. His stuff is sort of fantastical, but has like a true life grit to it. And he's done some historical pieces and a lot of slice of life stuff. His work was actually recommended to me by Shintaro Kago, who is a really insane experimental manga artist that some of you might recognize. George Akiyama did this series that I've read and had friends help me translate and read slowly called Ashura, which is just an example of the kind of work that he does. It's a story about peasants in the Edo in Japan. And it's also about cannibalism. This is the part where it gets violent. It was sexy, now it gets violent. I think that his work probably will be picked up, or I haven't heard anything officially, but I have a strong feeling that Fantagraphics or Drawn and Quarterly may pursue this artist. He's a logical extension from the stuff they've been doing, like Red Snow and the Tatsumi books. But when I see stuff like this, I just go crazy for a couple hours with this elaborate, beautiful scape and then dead peasants in the front. I only have a couple more manga people I'd like to talk about before we switch continents, but Go Nagai is someone that has been published in English. He is the creator of Cutie Honey, which they made a film of. It's like bodacious babes who transform into superheroes. He also has another one called Devilman, which is available in English, which is a psychedelic story about a good kid who goes to a party and does acid, and then he turns into Devilman, which is the devil, and he fights supervillains and monsters. I wanted to talk about another book which you can find online, illegally translated, called Violence Jack. And Violence Jack is basically a story of a nice teenage kid who was living in Tokyo in the 70s when a major earthquake hits, and the entire society falls apart. So I found it. I reread it recently after the tsunami, which sounds weird, but basically part of Tokyo gets destroyed, and it's all about how society breaks down and people turn into roving gangs. This is the opening scene where you first meet the main character, and he steps on a human skull and crushes it, like the beginning of Terminator 2. Gonagai is, there's a lot of his stuff in English, and there's also a lot of his stuff illegally scanned. So I'm not officially encouraging you to check that out, but you can find it if you use Google. Okay, and this is the last manga artist. This is someone who was published by Drawn Quarterly, I believe. They had Seiichi Hayashi had a book called Red Colored Elegy that came out a couple years ago. It's a really lush and kind of depressing story about two leftists in the 70s trying to make it work with no money, and it's like about a young couple in love. This is just a series of pinups that was online on this really good blog called Kurutta. It's Kurutta. And he does a lot of different stuff, but he's done a lot of commercial work in the 80s, and these are some of the pinups that he did that I come back to these all the time. Yeah, Edie told me make it like Tumblr, but in real life, so that's kind of what this is. Oh, right. Okay, so I tacked on at the end of the manga section a folder I made called Weird Stuff. This is weird stuff. I'm going to post online. I'm sorry, I should have done a better job, but I'll post online links to a lot of this material afterwards. I'll talk to Edie about getting it up. I'm trying to find... Okay, so here's a few things I want to show you before I move to the next section. There's a manga translation of Spider-Man that was made in the 70s. It's by Ryuichi Ikegami. You can find skins of this online as well. It's pretty cool. Like, Spider-Man's pretty tough. He fights the lizard. But he also has to fight Electro, who, when trying to get away from Spider-Man, takes a taxi. So this is him in a taxi. And Spider-Man literally is like, follow that cab. I was like, what is this? And there's the Japanese envisioning of Spider-Man from the late 70s. It's kind of got like a big fupa and a six-pack. I don't know. Someone laughing? Okay. Okay, so this book, I don't know what it is. This is not a good presentation in that sense that I can't tell you what this is, but I have the ISBN, so I'll have that as part of my link collection. I found this at a store for $6, and it's literally the weirdest thing I've ever seen. I don't know what's happening. I don't know who that fish is. I don't know. That'd be a cool tattoo. There's this like weird monkey boy with fins. He seems upset. Okay, at this point, like, I don't really. He kills both of them. I don't know. It's fun for me. I hope you guys are having fun. This is a good scene, actually. So, he comes to see this girl that he's in love with, and then she's like, oh, you're here, like, Aki, I can't believe you made it. And then you hear, like, this noise, and then she's like, oh, no. And he's been cut in half by someone you can't see off screen. Yeah. I can't tell if Edie is happy or, like, horrified. We're going to move to nice stuff after this. Oh, and then this is the last piece from this. This is not manga related, but... I live in the Mission District in San Francisco, and the cool thing about living there, among other things, is that we have really good burritos, and we also have tons of Mexican comics called historietas. I think most parts of LA and San Francisco have these, and also I've heard you can get them in Texas too, but if you're ever in a Hispanic neighborhood and you go to a Latino corner store, please find these because they're incredible, and they only cost $1. Okay, I'm going to try to stay on point a little bit more. That was the weird part. So the next section, I thought I'd talk a little bit about European comics. I started off as a translator and reading a lot of manga, but lately I've been really interested in the European scene. I don't speak any European languages, but it seems so strange to me that we know a lot more about what's going on in Japan than we do in Europe. At least I do. And lately a lot of distributors and publishers have been bringing over more European comics, but I think for me, like the area, my biggest blind spot in terms of like world comics is European stuff, especially what's happening right now. So I just wanted to show a few artists that I've been really interested in and kind of the sorts of things I'm interested in over the next year or so. So the first is Aisha Franz. Oh, and keep in mind, like, there's going to be last names that are German, French names. I'm going to butcher them, but what are you going to do? But Aisha is a young cartoonist. I think she's 24 or 25, living in Germany. And the cool thing about her is that I heard that she finished her senior project, and it was just like a 300-page book called Alien. Brought it to a con like this and showed it to a publisher, and they said, okay, let's do it. She got a book deal on the spot. So I guess that thing actually can happen if your work is really strong. Aisha has a website. It's I think, yeah, it's just aishafranz.com, I believe. You can find it pretty easily. It does a lot of these sorts of graphite things. I haven't heard of any news about her work being released in English, but it's already been released in French and I think in Spanish as well. If anyone knows anything about the artist I'm talking about, or I misspeak, that would be awesome, because a lot of this is hearsay and weird things I've pulled together from the internet. Okay, another one is an artist working in Sweden, Jovo V. I actually don't know I don't know this person well, but I've seen them a lot lately on Tumblr. And the interesting thing about Jovo is I don't think I've ever seen another artist who uses one color so clearly. Like, the color is the brand almost. Almost everything I've seen by Jovo is in this psychedelic hot pink. Jovo does a lot of commercial work. You can find a bunch of the pieces on online portfolios, and also I've seen a lot of fan art lately, like this piece, which was of Janelle Monáe that I absolutely loved. Or this piece, A Tribute to Drive. Oh, yes. So Uno Morales is an interesting artist, is a Russian creator. He's like 45 and looks really tough. He kind of, I'd never heard of his work until recently, but he's a pixel artist. And he's really frequently posting on Facebook, on Tumblr, and I'm seeing around the internet. I don't understand his process. Like, I've seen his work and I don't get how he makes it. He seems inspired by Japanese horror video games. And actually, one of his stories has been released in English, in an English publication. So there's a series called Chameleon that Johnny Negron and Jesse Ballmer self-publish, and Uno has a story in there. He lives and works in Russia. Doesn't really speak English, but communicates a little bit through Google Translate. And I wasn't able to show animated GIFs here, but a lot of his work is animated. I had this idea to do a series of lenticular animation prints of Uno's work, where the kind of thing where, like, as you walk past it, it changes and follows you. I'd love to see his work released in English, especially because so little of it actually has dialogue, so it would be a really easy sell. Oh, this is an animated GIF. Oh, it actually is animating. That's really poorly done. I didn't think it was going to go like that. Okay, here's another piece. And then we have to end with Special Agent Dale Cooper. The next creator is a painter named Anna de Florian. I encountered Anna's work in a really great anthology out of Latvia called Kush. And Kush is basically a small book about this big that features international indie artists. Lately, they've been opening up more to American and Canadian artists. I actually guest edited the 9th issue, which was the all-female issue, all-female creators. And Anna was one of the people who came to us through the open call. So they actually do an open call for half the content for each of the issues of their zine, and the level of talent coming in was incredible. And we were able to find a lot of work from people in Germany and in Latvia and in the Baltics. So I wanted to show a few paintings by Anna. Anna has a pretty strong web presence, so if you look her up, you can find her online gallery. Cool. This is an interesting story of someone who started as an indie in their country and is now working for one of the big publishers in the States. I think that's a happy story. Giannis is a Greek creator. He lives in Athens, and he started this series that the first time I encountered him, he started a series called Old City Blues. It's basically like Akira, but taking place in Greece after some sort of European tragedy. His stuff is very cyberpunk. Has sort of an 80s vibe in terms of the color, and it has like really interesting like shading and perspective. Giannis right now is working on Prophet for Image. So Brandon Graham relaunched Rob Liefeld's Prophet, and it's sort of like seems like it would be sort of a superhero comic, but if you're not checking it out, you totally should. They're rotating artists and creators throughout each of the issues, and so the newest issue features Giannis's work. Giannis has a really strong Tumblr where he's posting new sketches every day. It's an interesting mix of kind of gritty 80s anime-inspired cyberpunk and then fan art and other creative stuff. So Dilraj Man is someone who literally just like emailed me a couple months ago, and it kind of blew my mind. I had never heard of his work, but he's living in London. He's a watercolorist and a cartoonist. Who does sort of these funky, sexy girls and monsters, which are two topics that are close to my heart. I just saw this was online and for sale on his big cartel. And I thought about getting it for my girlfriend for a present, but I didn't know if it would be something she'd like. Yeah. Okay. And this is a print that I encountered on Tumblr, and only months later did I realize, oh, this was also by Dilraj. So Sasha Homer is someone that I actually met in Frankfurt at a book fair I had to go to for my day job. I used to work in digital publishing stuff, so my work was really boring, and I kind of just did desk jockey stuff all the time, like most people, but they sent me to Germany once, and that was amazing. So basically, I would work the booth and do demos of the product I was working on, and then on all my lunch breaks, I would go over to the comics hall and try to find out what was going on with German comics. So Sasha is someone I met and was really sweet to me. He's published by Reproduct, which is kind of like the Fantagraphics of Germany. Like they've done the German editions of Tomine's stuff and Dan Klaus and a few other people, but they have a whole host of German creators, and Sasha's one of them. Sasha's stuff to me looks like if Charles Burns and like Peanuts by Charles Schultz like had a baby together. It's really simple and sort of effortless, but it has this sort of gritty geometric sense to it, which I really like. Sasha has a blog where he blogs in German, so I can't read it, but he posts a lot of his sketches and work in progress. He also has a book called Insect, which came out in 2008. It's about a boy who is a bug and his family life. And Sasha tried to find a publisher in English and couldn't find one, so he just went ahead and translated it himself, or I think his friend did. And they sort of officially, unofficially posted the whole thing online. So if you look it up, it's by Sasha Homer, and it's spelled Insekt. You can find this whole book. It's one that I've heard people like Michael DeForge, Helen Jo, and a lot of other creators refer to as one of the things that inspires some of their work. He also does fan art, like pretty much everybody on the list. The East. Okay, so I made another section, which is non-manga people that I want to know more about. So there's scenes that aren't as, I think, they're a little more opaque, at least to me, because I don't speak Chinese or any other Asian or South Asian languages. But hunting around on the internet, you can find some of these creators, and I'll talk about some of their sites. Puck is a guy who I know nothing about, and his name is ungoogleable, kind of. But if you look up Puck cartoonist, you can find this guy. He lives in Thailand, and he's a creator who is really prevalent on the internet and has some books out, but there's nothing in English. But his site and his Tumblr are quite interesting. He's doing a lot of kind of cool, challenging work. I emailed with him. I used Google Translate, and it was I use that. That's kind of my thing. I use Google Translate to email people in languages I don't speak. But he sent me a box of books, and I sent him a box of books, and we haven't spoken since. But he seems to be quite popular in Thailand. But I don't really know anything about the Thailand scene. I wish I did. Okay, cool. So I want to talk about two people from the Hong Kong art scene. These are two creators that are really prevalent on the internet, and they have Twitters, Facebook groups, and Tumblrs. So they're very easy to find once you start looking. Telephone Fung is a young creator who lives in Hong Kong. She's in, I think, her late 20s, and she's a painter by trade. I've seen a lot of her. She also seems to do a lot of commercial work, but I mostly like her pinups and things like this. Her stuff is very femme, but like a lot of bold colors and interesting layouts. Okay, so Little Thunder, I've talked about a lot of people. Little Thunder is one of my favorite contemporary artists. If you are looking for something to do tonight, I recommend you spend a couple hours on her Flickr. Little Thunder is a Hong Kong artist. It's one of those things that's weird with the internet where you can't tell how popular someone is in their own country. She's done ad campaigns for Givenchy and Chanel, but also does comics. She's a cartoonist. Her stuff is really playful, colorful, and inspired, I think, like a lot of contemporary indie cartoonists from Asia and America by manga and by anime. I was spending time pulling pieces by hers, and a lot of them are couples and very romantic. She also does a lot of some historical pieces, but the main thrust of the stuff that I really like is these kind of delicate, colorful things, and then also some of these really intricate lines like this. I don't know what this is for, but it just blew my mind. So Little Thunder has a series out, but it's only available in French and Chinese. It's called Kailui, and it's Kylooi. You can get the first book. You can get the books on Amazon.fr for like 10 or 15 bucks each, and they're in this style, very colorful. I don't know why, this was a bad idea. I don't know why I put this in here, but I was thinking about the series that we just finished, which was a series of erotic comics, and I remembered that there's an Indian web comic called Sativa Bobby, which I think means like sexy auntie. I read about this because I heard it in the New Yorker, and it caused a huge scandal in India a few years ago. It's still going strong, but it's basically Indian sexy web comics. It seems weird to me now that I'm showing you this. I don't know why I'm doing that. But it's crazy, and it caused a huge fervor in India because so many people were scandalized by the work. It's available online, and it looks trashy, and it is. And it looks poorly drawn, and yes, it also is. But it's something really compelling, and I think the fact that it freaked out an entire nation's moms and the equivalent of PTAs and things like that makes me happy. So you can find all this on the internet, and it will get you fired if you look at it at work, so don't do that. So I'm moving into the last section, and for lack of a better term, this is just friends of ours that I think are cool. Yeah, nothing else to it, but these are mostly American and Canadian artists that we know, some of whom are here today, that for whatever reason, often because they don't have much of a web presence or they are just too humble, aren't really getting talked about as much as I think they should, so I just wanted to give shout-outs to some people real quick. Lala Albert, some of you may know her. She lives in Brooklyn. She's a cartoonist. She self-publishes a book called Alien Invasion, and she also has been in a couple different anthologies, including Kush, the Latvian book I mentioned. The thing that you may not know about her is that she, in addition to being a cartoonist, is a fabric designer. So she recently, I think her company recently had them sign NDAs, so you can't speak about the work that they do, but I found some that she had posted previously before that, and I just wanted to give shout-outs to some of her work. It's interesting, I think, when you look at some of these patterns and fabric design that she's doing, and then connect it back to some of her comics work. They seem worlds apart in one sense, but there's also a sense of color and composition that I think connects them pretty well. I'm also really fascinated by cartoonist day jobs. Like some of them seem to work in computers. Some of them seem to do layout, or other people. Yeah, people do all sorts of strange things. So I found this fascinating that to see the connection between high art and fabric, and the indie comic books that we're all buying today. Another person that I follow religiously and buy everything she does is Mickey Zakili. She's out there. I don't think she knows. She's not in the room, is she? No, okay. Mickey does amazing work. And actually, Mickey is the first person I saw who started using the risograph. It's a high-volume screen printing machine that a lot of cartoonists have been using lately. It allows you to do spot colors and multicolor prints for cheap. So Mickey is based in Providence, and part of that group of RISD kids that started using the risograph to great effect. So we use the risograph for the books that we publish, and seeing the work that Mickey did is what inspired us. That'd be really cool if that was Mickey. It's not. Okay. And then you can see some of the effects that you can achieve using burgundy on yellow or red on pink. So another, this is a cartoonist that I really like, Jose Luis Olivares. He is in the Northeast. And the one thing that I wanted to give a quick shout out to that Jose is doing this year that I think is interesting is at the beginning of the year he started a subscription model for his mini comics, something I'd never really seen anyone do, but he basically said, if you give me, I think it was $40 at the beginning of the year, I'll send you a new comic every month. And each comic is in a different medium. I think I've heard other people talking about maybe trying this after Jose's model, but so far basically every month I get a package that I forgot I was expecting, and it has a different mini that Jose has done. He's been doing things in crayon, woodblock prints, and other mediums. He also works a lot with kids, so you can kind of get that vibe from his comics. One of the ones I got just recently was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles like fan fiction comic. Yeah, So this is a Bay Area cartoonist. Her name is Sophia Foster Domino. Her day job is working at Google, and she is one of the doodlers. So she's one of the 4 or 5 people who do all the logos. So the cool holiday logos and different things like that. Sophia is one of that small team. And her personal work, I think, is really exciting. Sophia has a Tumblr that she's posting to pretty regularly, and it features this sort of work. She also does watercolors as sort of her warm-up sketches every morning, and she's been posting those as she's doing them. Sophia's been in Kush #9 and Dimensions, which is an anthology of mostly RISD kids that I think there's a booth out here that has copies available. I've heard that she's working on a collection of her own work, a monograph, and so that would be fantastic to see more of this sort of work. Hugh Frost is a creator in the UK. He, on the same tip as before, he is a risograph printer who started a company called Landfill Editions. They have a series of books that aren't very widely distributed in the US yet, but it's more of this kind of thing which I've been really interested in lately, which is using just a few colors to great effect. This is a 3-color print, purple, yellow, and fuchsia, but the effects that some people who have that mind for color separation can achieve is really... This is the kind of thing I stare at and I get pissed off because it's so good. Hugh recently shut down Landfill Editions, which was sort of a bummer because he decided to go to art school in Sweden. So he sold off his risograph and is moving to Sweden to pursue his own work. But they have a great site which has tons of work available. It's mostly minis and little books. This is from a series, I think they're maybe doing a final 3rd issue, but it's called Mold Map, and it's just a huge format book full of like very, very visual, striking stuff like this. So Jefferson Chang, he is a friend of ours who works and lives in San Francisco. He actually also works on Google, but on the graphics team, so doing icons, logos, and those little bits that make your experience a lot prettier. He has a new book coming out this summer called Houses. This is actually from the preview PDF he sent me. I didn't tell him I did this, but I just screen capped it and wanted to show you guys. It's another, I don't know what it is, but lately I've been drawn to this sort of thing, just 1 or 2 spot colors. Jefferson has a website, and I think this book should be coming out in the next month or 2. Coming up on the last few people I wanted to talk about, this is a creator named Aaron Kaneshiro who's gone through a lot of different names. He's gone by Aaron K and also by Shunga. His minis are some of the first ones I ever bought on the internet. He's working on a book right now called Cabeza, and most recently had a book called Vacuum Horror put out. His stuff is pretty rugged, and I've actually found weird connections between a lot of indie cartoonists who all read his stuff when we were like 19. So I read his stuff when I was in college. Michael DeForge mentions Aaron as one of his inspirations, and also Mario Domo, interestingly enough. It's kind of like the anti-Tomine thing. And some of his work gets sort of psychedelic. So he has a website, I think it's aaronshunga.com, AARONSHUNGA.com, where he sells his minis and also posts regularly. Hannah K. Lee is another San Francisco-based illustrator. She has done spot illustrations for the New Yorker, New York Times, and a few other magazines, and hasn't done a lot of comics, but recently started releasing zines of her work. This is a book that will be printed on Risograph this summer. The book's called No Money, Mo Problems, and it's basically a collection of things that she had to buy instead of buying shoes. She has sort of an arch narrative about being a freelancer and sort of the compromises you have to make. And some of the stuff she does with typographic work, just, I don't know how she does it. It blows my mind. She also has a mini out called Issues. It's a series she's doing about sort of coming to terms with being in your 20s. And it's available on her site, too. The last of the Bay Area people I wanted to give shout-outs to, since that's where I live and work, is Jesse Ballmer. He's a illustrator and cartoonist. He's done a few comics. I think the one that you may know is called Demon God Goblin Heaven, which he did as a split with Johnny Negron. They're old friends, and the way that they did that series was they literally, I was like, oh, did you guys do like a jam, like panel by panel by panel? They actually sat together at a big table and drew all the pieces together. And lately he's been doing more of this sort of art. Jesse also co-edits Chameleon, which is an interesting anthology of fiction, of comics. They're put out 2 issues so far, and the 3rd one's coming out. And in each of the issues, both Jesse and Johnny have pieces. And this is an example of a piece that Jesse and Johnny Negron did together. And Jesse follows a trend I think that I've seen a lot of artists doing now, which I really like, which is using Big Cartel to actually just sell original art directly to fans. So I know different friends have different feelings about selling their originals, who would want it, or I'm not ready to part with it, but it seems like a great way to get art for cheap and into the hands of fans who want to follow your work. I think this is the last one. I'm going to end a little early because I got nervous and started speaking fast, but this is Chris Mukai, who is based in New York. She's another screen printer and risograph printer cartoonist. She did this book, which was basically, it's called Slow Youth, and it's just a poster folded over and over. So as you unfold it, you find different pieces inside of it. Printed on purple ink so dark that like as soon as you touch it, your hands are stained. Chris has a Tumblr and a site where she posts frequently. She's also on Twitter, so you can hit her up. This is the one from Slow Youth. This is the inside once you've unfolded the book completely. It's a massive poster all in purple. And I have this in my print shop above my printer, sort of to keep me going with inspiring myself. She also started doing animated GIFs from the New Yorker recently. I don't know why. It's a weird sign of the times that they're putting animated GIFs on their site now. Oh, cool. Oh, yeah, and this is the last thing I wanted to share. This was from the first time I ever went to a con. I went with some friends of mine. I had never made a zine before, and they made this. My friend Derek Yu made this comic for Dan Klaus, Adrian Tomine, and Johnny Ryan. It's kind of offensive and really weird, but I wanted to share it because this was the thing that inspired me to start doing comics, because it's so offensive and weird. I remember them creating this comic one day at our dorm, printing it at Kinko's the next day, and then taking it to Ape and handing it to these creators directly. And I just remember thinking, I can't believe you can get away with just creating something this terrible and handing it to famous people, and that's just how zines and indie comics work. So I had to throw that in as the last piece. And Dan Klaus comes off really well in this. So I heard a story later that Dan sent this to Johnny Ryan. And that's it. That was the presentation. Does anyone have any questions about any of the creators we talked about? I know it's not a format that allows or makes for question and answer very easy, but was there any creators or anyone that anyone wanted more information about, or? Okay, Edie. If not, then. Oh. Yeah, that's a good question. Edie, what do you think? Should I post on my site or yours? I wanted to do a follow-up just showing links and a link dump of everything I talked about. Okay, I'll put together something for the Cake site, just a blog post, and then I'll also post it on my blog, which is electricantzine.com. There's a blog and a Tumblr there. So, but I'll work with Edie to get something up. I realized that as I was putting it together, that would be the most helpful. So, collection of everyone we talked about, and then links to find more of their work. Cool. Thanks for sitting through it. I hope you found some people that you're interested in. Thanks.